Hello there, this is Yash Kumar Verma, and in this particular video I'll be showing how we are implementing the cache layer. So it was a completely different task apart from the one of creating a prototype for the role based access control. And in this particular video I'll be showing how we are implementing the cache layer and how basically everything's done in this. So huh, as you can see that I've spun up a Redis instance and it is not authenticated, nothing is secure because it's just a prototype. All right. Okay. So a lot of the things that are happening in this particular video depend upon Redis. So here we are initializing the connection, and this particular function, whenever it runs, it ensures that the connection has been successful. So I will boot the server once and show you. By the time that happens, let me show you the syntax again that we are using to implement the cache layer. In the modules, users, and the services, you can see that we have used a decorator here which says @cache. So what this @cache does is it monitors this particular function whenever it is being called. It also monitors the parameters that are being called, because the parameters merely define what the output of the function would be, and it also monitors the result or the output that is coming out of the function. So all these things are being monitored by using a decorator that I've written, and it will automatically cache the result of this particular function and save it into the memory storage, and for us that would be Redis. So the Redis server has booted, and as you can see, I'm using this extension to quickly view the contents of Redis that are there. All right. So and the databases folder contains the users that we have in store right now. So we have one moderator, the roles moderator, the first name is mod. We have one user, the roles user, and the first name is simple. And we have one admin, the roles admin, and the first name is also admin. Now these are the only three users that we have in the database right now. In the previous video I have shown that the tests are passing, which means that everything is happening by the way that we had planned it to. If you check the default configurations, we see that the cache is enabled by default. If you want to disable the cache globally throughout the application, you can simply say cache enable, you can just put it as false. Now whenever we are using tests, because cache can cause a lot of issues when we are running tests, because a lot of database calls are happening over there, and if we cache them, then we can get into trouble, because we would not see the variation of data that we usually get when we are making minor changes, and testing the edge cases can become slightly difficult. So in the test environment, the cache is disabled by default. All right. So I've discussed the configurations of cache that we have done. I've discussed the syntax that we have basically created so that we can implement the cache pretty quickly. All right. Class user service, and you say @cache. Now as you can see, I have decided to not cache this find all service, which I'll be doing midway in this video to show you how everything's working. I've not cached the create method, and I've not cached the delete user by email method. The main reasons for this is to demonstrate that the cache decorator can be selectively applied to any of the functions that we have written, and this makes it really flexible, so that we don't have to we can easily toggle on and off the functions that we want to cache and which not to, because in the description it was given that a handful of functions take a significant time, and we might not want to cache everything into the storage. So that is the reason for that. All right. Now moving on to the part where we have first let us show the functioning of cache. All right. You see that it says that it is listening on port 3000. That's done. The connection .mongodb.successful, which means that we have successfully connected to the MongoDB client, and the connection .redis.success, which means that we have successfully connected to the Redis client. Now these things are coming from app.ts, and you see the functions being called here: initialize MongoDB, which says that connection.mongodb.successful, initialize Redis, connection.redis.successful, and similarly role check status, which shows you all the roles which are there and all the resources that we have right now in the system. All right. So moving on to the next part, in which we basically see how we have implemented the cache layer. You have seen the syntax, and now is the time to like roll up the curtains and show you how everything's being worked upon. All right. So let's do a simple bottom up approach, in which the main code base for everything resides in the decorator, and here we are importing a few things. First is the logger. The logger that the entire application is using. The resolver, I'll be discussing that next. Resolver. Okay, in the decorator there is a function called set cache and query cache that we'll also be discussing. Set cache and query cache, and then it's just the config that we are importing. All right, so let us move from the bottom up. So this function does basically kind of not, this function is just a utility function. It is used to make calls to the Redis client in which gives us a nice syntax. We can use async await and everything with that. All right. So it returns a promise string or a null. So it calls the Redis client and it tries to fetch an index. The response can be an error or a data object. If it's not an if the error is not null, then we tell that okay, it's an error, and we return a null. If the data is null, which means that the index is currently not set and that particular index is not currently cached, so we indicate that the DB has become active, because when the cache is missed, we make a call to the database and then we return a null. And just in case if the data is not null, which means that we have got the data from the database, we say that the cache is hit, and we display the index at which the cache was hit, so that we can quickly see in the logs that how the cache is functioning, and then we return the data. This was query.ts. Now the second part is set.ts. What set.ts is doing is, whenever we call set.ts, you just pass it an index and the data. This is also a utility function that we have written above the client.set method, and it allows us to store any data at the index, and it allows us to store any information in the memory at a particular index, and this would be the data. Now data is supposed to be a JSON object, so we are using JSON.stringify to convert it into a string, plus the index by default is string. All right, and if there's an error, we show an error. If there's not, we tell the cache is set for that particular index. Now that is done, we move up to the resolver. Now this is a fairly interesting function, because it does something that that basically makes this method to work. Now what we are doing here is, I'll explain it line by line. So first of all, getSignature is a function. It accepts it accepts three parameters. First is the signature, the property key, and the arguments, and it will return a string, which means it is used to transform all this data and then store it in the form of a string. The head means the first part. All right, as you can see here, we are returning two parts, the head and the tail. The head is the signature.name. all right, so this signature is basically a function. Here what we have defined as any signature is basically a function instance that we are passing. So signature is supposed to be a function. So signature.name means we are calling the function name over here. The property key that the second parameter is added after it. We put a dot in between, so that we can basically get to know the differentiation between the two, and then we convert it to a lowercase. Now lowercase is just for this is not really need of lowercase, but these are just to ensure the consistency between the indexes that we are storing. All right, so the head is done, and in the tail part, what we do is first we insert two colons, and this is just a syntactic part. This is to just notify that the head part is done, and after it we are including the tail part. Now args.for each. Basically args here means arguments. So whatever arguments that are being passed in this particular function, the signature function, the arguments of those function are obtained over here. This is an array of strings. So we do a for each, whatever element that we get, if the element is an object, which means if the argument to the function is an object, then we are basically flattening the object. This code you would find on Stack Overflow. I picked it from there as well. What it does is, it's a like fairly tested code. What it does is it allows you to flatten an object into a sequence of string, all right, as you can see over here. And once that's done, the tail gets the parameters appended like string, and if it's not an object, then it would be a string or a number. Whatever it is, if it's a string or a number, then we convert it into a string, just so that we have a uniformity and we don't face any asymmetric issues like colliding with the string functions that we have, and then we form the tail of it. Now once the tail is made, and you see the for each function here, because we are doing this for all the arguments that are being passed into the signature function, and then we return the head and the tail. All right, so what this function does is, it is used to convert a function into a signature, right? It says get signature. So I'll show you the working, and this will become really like simple after that. Now moving on to the part where we have described the decorator. A decorator returns a function, as you can see over here, which has 3 properties. Now this is the syntax of TypeScript itself. So first of all, we get the descriptor value, and original means the original function that we are modifying the behavior of. So user slash service. Alright, so if we check the service, we say @cache. Now this is a decorator that we have described over here. Function cache, that's what we are returning, and this is the definition of the cache decorator. Alright, what the signature is doing is, the first is we say original equals to descriptor.value, which means that original now contains the definition of this particular function. This particular function is now contained in original, get original function. The second is we are checking if cache is enabled. So wherever we are showing the configurations, we see cache.enable. If this is false, then we end the execution over here itself. If it's not enabled, then we return the flow, and there's no need to further process it. Now moving on to the part where the actual data manipulation comes in. What we are doing is descriptor.value, which means that we are changing the way the original function works, whatever arguments that were passed to it, and we get a signature of the target, name, and arguments. Now target is again a function. Target contains this definition, then name contains the name of the function, and args contains the argument of the function. We do a cache lookup, which says query cache, the function that I just explained. It checks if this particular function signature already exists in the cache, and if it's null, which means that now we need to do a db call, then we run the original function with these arguments. So if this particular signature, if the signature of this function, all right, signature contains the function name and the argument values. Now note that these are the argument values, and which contain the actual data. All right, so if the signature does not exist on cache, then we run this function. All right, if the signature does not exist in cache, then we run this function, and then we update the cache and return the results. Set cache is the function that I just explained. All right, so if the cache does not exist, then we make a db call and return the results. And if the cache exists, then what we do is we do just a cache lookup. The cache lookup that was done, it should have returned data. We just pass the JSON and return it. Now that is the entire description of the cache decorator. What it allows us to do is, it allows us to use @cache anywhere where we want to cache the results. So that was kind of a fairly big monologue. So I'll show you the demo of it now. So first of all, I'll log in. as admin so that we don't have any issues of rights over here. Alright, invalid credentials. Okay, let's leave that for a side. Let's just read the logs right now. It says cookie.set equals to false, which means that whichever user made the request, their their cookies were not set up, which means that they were not authenticated. It says cache.miss, and then we see the function signature, user service dot find one by email and password. All right, and if I open user slash service, find one by email and password, we see we had set the cache decorator over here, and that is the reason it says cache miss user service dot find one by email and password, and then we put 2 colons, and I had shown you like the separator between the head and the tail. That's just completely something that's implemented in the syntax, and then you see the email admin@gmail.com, which we have set up over here, admin@gmail.com, and the password as 12345, and the password as 12345. All right, so this is the index of the cache now. And then you say that the DB is active, which means that now we are performing an operation on the database, right? If I run this particular function again, then the cache, since the cache is inserted, and if we refresh it, all right, because the operation was not successful, so the cache is not updated. All right, my bad. Since the operation was not successful, so the cache is not accepted. So let me do something different.